Factory Talk: Secrets of Effective Plant Leaders. Produced by
Well, welcome everybody. I'm Jamie Flunchball, and this is one of our interviews of the Factory Talk series, where we talk to operational leaders, hear about what makes them work, what makes it tick, and what makes them successful. So I have Greg Kelly here with us today. Greg, why don't you introduce yourself, please?
Thank you, Jamie. My name is Greg Kelly, and I'm the current CEO of Heartland Steel Products, and we are a material handling company that makes basic platforms, safety products, and racking systems. We're located, throughout the United States, and we've got about 350 employees, and we're excited to be here today.
Fantastic. And we'll have, I'll say, leaders from all sorts of different types of companies and sizes. But at that size, your sleeves are rolled up and involved in the operations day to day. So even though you're the CEO, we'll hear lots and lots about the day to day running of your operations. So.
Yes, I every day I attend our stand-up production meetings virtually when I'm not on airplanes. So I believe that the heartbeat and the cadence of what's going on in the factories is an indicator of how you're treating customers. So it's very important to me.
Yeah, that's fantastic, and yeah, it certainly beats an occasional tour to be that connected to the drumbeat of the operation. So you've had a long history of different operation roles and quite an interesting background. But you have a lot of passion for operations. What job best prepared you to really be a factory leader, and why?
So it was actually my first job out of the University of Tennessee, and it was in a textile factory in Harriman, Tennessee, Kaiser Roth Hosiery, and I learned a lot about how to treat people. I learned a lot about how departmental operations flow can get either very complicated or very streamlined. And I also learned that multi-shift operations is very difficult to communicate from shift to shift. So that probably gave me the best exposure and experience to what I really like to do, and that was to figure out how to get average people to do great things.
That's fantastic passion and mission. I've done my own share of second shift work, and you get a good appreciation of what you're missing because you don't get everything that some of the other shifts might get, um, and you kind of have to fend for yourself sometimes.
One of the things that I learned also being on third shift, second shift, and all that stuff was you have a lot of freedom to try things, and I used to make comments. If we screw this up, we've got all night to fix it before anybody knows about it.
Right.
So we experiment a lot.
Yep. No, I found the same thing. It's you've freedom to try some things, part out of need and part because you lack the oversight and governance that might
Correct.
prevent that. So
Correct.
sometimes we've had the most improvements on a second shift.
Sure.
So you've already mentioned that you have sort of a daily discipline of participating in your daily huddles. So just in general, what is the most important thing as you start each day with the discipline and rhythm of ongoing operations?
So the first thing I look at is the key metrics from yesterday. And one of the things I've been trying to explain to everybody and get the passion around is we cannot change yesterday, but we can take how we performed yesterday and make today better. And so I really don't focus a lot backwards, but I do take the backwards data to focus forward. And so every day starts with me reviewing our performance from the prior day, and that kind of bleeds into how we approach our management system every day. And we do have a documented management system where production meetings, there's a cadence. review of metrics. There's a cadence. So for me, every day is what can I learn from yesterday to make today great.
That's great. So what do you do with those metrics? Do you drive discussions about learning, or is it about problem solving, or not repeating mistakes? What conversations does that drive?
Well, in all honesty, I spend most of my time teaching people how to interpret the data and focus on how to isolate conditions that indicate root cause. Because what I find is everybody understands, or has their own view of the world of what little thing that they think created the problem. And very few people I find in industry today still, very few people will isolate variables that enable you to really get to root cause.
That's great. So it kind of leads into my next question, because you talk about that role of being a teacher, right? So you spend a lot of time helping people, teaching them how to look at performance, how to look at variables. So that's one way you allocate your time. But how do you allocate your time with the demands of the factory, the team, external customers, and so on?
Yep. So I actually color code my calendar, and I I have it printed off, but I didn't print it in color because I'm not wasteful either. Um, but I do color code it, and my approach, my daily work approach is I want to spend about 30% of my day dealing with operations daily stuff, and I spend about another um, 50%, to be honest with you, working on um, my team one-on-ones, um, and really about the culture of the team, the culture of the company. And in the other 20%, I work on kind of where our gaps are and what strategies we need to either incorporate or tweak to improve. So, it's probably 30% daily, 50% people stuff, and 20% strategy. Eventually, and some of that has to do with the condition I found the company in when I got here. I would like to spend about 50% of my time on strategy, but because I've had to spend so much time developing people and developing the next leadership change, that's kind of why I've had to approach it that way.
Yeah, no, that makes complete sense. And I think it's always helpful to have a target state for how you want to spend your time. Not just say, I wish I spent more time, but an actual target state says 50% of my time should be on this. It's not now. There's a clear gap that you can then go manage, and it tells you a lot.
Yep.
So I color code my calendar too. So I appreciate that. Um, and I don't have an operation to run, so to speak, but color coding your calendar is one form of leader standard work. There's many
Yes.
different forms of it, but how else do you use forms of leader standard work to help you with your focus and discipline?
So one of the things I'm very passionate about is having a management system that's documented. And I can remember many years ago when I was really, got indoctrinated in continuous improvement and lean, and actually taught it at Dell for a period of time. I was real passionate about how does people know how do people know where decisions are made, and how does people know when decisions are made. Because what I find is most business gets done in the hallways or on the factory floor walking between something.
Hmm.
And what I find is it breeds inconsistency in how you manage. So I have a documented management system for weekly things, or for daily things, weekly things, monthly things, quarterly things, yearly things. And so every month my team knows that we're going to have a scorecard review. And every month everybody knows that here's the 10 metrics or 12, whatever the number is, and we're going to go into detail around things that influence the performance. They also know that if we talk about capacity planning or S&OP process, had that meeting today. So every Tuesday, everybody knows that if you've got a capacity question or if you've got a capacity issue that you need dealt with, you come to that meeting, because that's when we do that. So I, when people first see a management system, they think, golly, look at all these meetings. After people have used one effectively, they realize just how little you have to meet.
Yeah, and then boy, too many meetings is a big complaint. But when you get it focused on the right things, it makes all the difference. Now, I didn't sort of ping you on this question in advance, but you brought up management systems a couple of times, and you
Yes.
know, I find when we talk about management systems to most organizations, they really don't even know what that means, right? So I think I heard some of the answer, at least in your explanation, but how do you even define a management system? What does that include?
So, my view of the world, and through years of experience and a lot of mistakes, is most companies do not spend enough time thinking about how they deliver the vision or the purpose or the strategy to the people that actually do the work. Okay. And so I worked at Nortel Networks. They no longer exist. And one of the reasons why they no longer exist is because they had a great strategy that never got executed. Okay.
Mhm.
So I believe that your company's mission, vision, and what that is only able to be deployed if you have a management system for communication, for metric development, review, that flows into an employee's performance review. Okay, so whenever I talk about a management system, I'm talking about the physical process in which we get together and communicate, and we negotiate how we're gonna hold ourselves accountable,
Yep.
and that translates into the employees that do the work, daily work.
Hmm.
I
No, I
hope I
think that's
explained it.
yeah, it's pretty good. Managers also do work in real processes, and that's not a management system, right? The management
Correct.
system is the stuff that leads to that work, and so I think that's a great explanation. Now you've already talked about two components of that management system, which are touch points for you: the daily huddle, the monthly metric review. What other touch points do you use to interact with the operation as a whole?
Uh, well, we do a quality review um, uh, every month. Also, we do new product introduction reviews that involves engineering through sales, and we talk about how do we enable new products or new offerings, product offerings, whether it be a physical product or a service. Um, I you know I spend a lot of time with the engineering team, because one of the pieces of our business is engineered products. So it's a engineer to order. So I've got a I've got a really stocking position for safety products, and I've got a semi engineer to order for racks, but most of it's standard. And then I've got a highly engineered platform business. And so and so engineering, depending on what piece of the business we're talking about, is either highly consumed or doesn't have anything to do with it. So I spend a lot of time with the engineering and quality teams.
That's great. So we're going to come back to metrics. You brought that up with
Hmm.
the reviews you do. So in addition to that, how do you use metrics daily, weekly, monthly, and how do you design them, right? So there's so many metrics you can have, picking the right ones,
Yeah.
right people is so important. So not just how do you use them, but how do you design the right metrics for your org?
So I grew up in business. Whenever people were reading the balance scorecard and doing all that, how do you algorithm have an algorithm to figure out whether or not one's more important than the other. I think it's pretty simple. If you've got metrics of how you're treating your people, and that's generally going to be some sort of safety or OSHA rate or attendance or some way that predicts how people feel about working for you. Okay. So how am I doing with people? How am I doing with customers? And that's typically going to be a quality metric. It's going to be on-time delivery metric. And then well, how am I treating my people that have invested in us, our shareholders, right? And that's going to be some sort of, a profitability statement, blah, blah. So I'm a big believer that after you get past about 10 metrics, you got too many.
Mhm.
Okay. So I really try to focus on, the vital few. And so every day in that production meeting, we have three buckets we talk about: happy employees, delighted customers, and happy shareholders. And we talk about how we did yesterday on every metric that flows into my staff's metrics.
Oh, that's great. So should I read something into you listing people metric first? And if
Yes,
so, what does that mean? What does that mean to you?
I I I believe, you know, um, I believe that the only reason why operations people exist is because of the people they're entrusted with every day. Okay. Now you can talk about customers, you can talk about all those things, but one of the things I try to really instill in in our frontline supervisors is the only reason why I need you is to enable that team of people to do great things. And so I believe that flows into how you treat your customers, and I believe that flows into how you become profitable. And I grew up in a family that my dad was a shop steward for 40 years, and I know what it's like to be. And I worked on the floor before I went to college, all that stuff. I know what it's like to be on the floor, and I've never forgotten it. Is how we treat the people that physically do the work will be an indicator of how we treat everybody else.
Yeah, I love that. It's fundamentally, anybody can buy technology. Anybody can move a factory anywhere else in the world. Yes, you can invent new products, but there's an awful lot of stuff that you can copy and get pretty close to. What's going to make the difference? In a lot of cases, it all comes down to those people.
It does. It does. And you know, it, the saying is, if you don't have the hearts and the minds of your employees, then all you are is another company.
Right.
And I don't want to be just another company.
That's fantastic. So, switching gears a little to lean and continuous improvement,
hmm
how has the lean toolbox helped your factory? How do you put lean to work in making your factory better?
So, ironically, Jamie, 30 minutes before this meeting, I actually went to a Kaizen report out on the team. It was a team of 13 people, and this is the first time we've done this virtually because of all the pandemic, COVID. Ordinarily we would actually fly people to be together because I'm a big believer in, I'm an old guy. I believe in eyeball to eyeball, right? and but I embrace technology as well. And so this was kind of an experiment for us: is how do we really make a virtual Kaizen event meaningful? And it forced us to be better. And what I'm finding is I've done lean in multiple companies, and what I found is always successful is don't make it perfect to start.
Yep.
And what when I first got here, there was some lean things going on in the company, but people were doing it because it was expected. We didn't do the basics and teach people the tools. And if you don't do lean in your daily work, Kaizen events are just events.
Hmm.
And so what I'm finding today is we're spending more time talking about the tools, the more simplistic tools, the 5 whys, the Pareto's, fishbones. We're doing all that stuff. And we had a team of 13 people reported out to me today, and they solved I learned a new word when I was at General Motors called perennial problem. Okay, that was a new word that I got introduced to when I was at General Motors, and so we had a perennial problem inside the company with the way orders flowed through the company, and so 13 people got together and fixed it for us. And historically, people would just complain about it, but today we actually have a plan, an executable plan, and it will be fixed tomorrow.
That's fantastic. And I think that that point you made around just start is so important. I mean, I do most of my coaching is what I spend most of my time on, and I fly all over the world to do it. Can't, and it broke a lot of things.
Yep.
And so but I think a lot of the things that I've had to adjust have made it even better than it was. And I've talked with companies that have tried to defer improvements.
Yep.
I've talked to those who have tried to do it the way they were, just online. And then I've talked to companies that have tried to get innovative and creative about how they approach it. And so I think we're going to see a lot of improvements to improvement coming out of this forced change in our work.
So one of the things that also I've noticed is when I first got to the company, we had all the Microsoft Suite stuff, and we weren't using it fully. And people thought I was crazy when I started talking about using Microsoft Teams and all the things that was associated with it. I can honestly tell you that we were fully prepared for the pandemic because we had been using the collaboration tools before all this happened. And so people, other than just everybody being lonely, we were still communicating pretty effectively. So
Right.
that's one thing I am pleased about is we weren't doing technology for technology's sake. We were trying to improve collaboration, and it was working.
That's great. Yeah, I've seen some companies that were thinking about it but hadn't quite gotten there, and others that were already ready. So everybody's trying to get ready now. So you talked about starting with the basics and some fundamental lean practices. If you did have to choose one tool that you love or would help your factory the most, what would that be and why?
So, well, it's the 5 whys. And the reason, because most people can understand that concept. And if you do that, then multi-level Pareto starts to make more sense to people. Because what I find is we start asking the 5 whys, and then you start using data to bolster your assertion in the first why. Then all of a sudden you're teaching them how to go down in the data to really isolate root cause. So I'm a big believer in 5 whys because people resonate to that.
Yeah. I think it's a very flexible method, and ultimately most of the solutions that we know, if you just do enough problem solving, you'll end up recreating those solutions, right? So do enough 5 whys, and you can solve the world's problems. So
Yep.
well, I appreciate you joining us for this interview. I wish you and your team all the success in not just the pandemic, but beyond, and achieving all your performance goals, and being a happy team serving great customers.
Jamie, I appreciate you inviting me, and any time that we can be of any help to you, or if you know anybody that loves great material handling equipment, I'll be happy to talk to them.
You've got it. Thanks.